Welcome back to the Tailosive EV podcast, ladies and gentlemen. He has been uncancelled.
Me.
The triumphant return.
Right?
And
Oh, hi, Randy.
I have died before.
Oh, no, not this again.
Yeah, we're doing this again.
here we go.
Where's the royal voice sword?
I wanted to remind everyone, after rearranging the EV podcast YouTube channel a little bit, we've got V1, V2, V3. We're in V4. Did you even know that?
No.
We're in V's?
We're in season 4 of the EV podcast.
That doesn't
It's our
sound
versions. Their version of
Because you started in 2020, didn't you?
Well,
It didn't sound right to me either.
No, because we started
Without video.
without video, and we also are we including when it was consolidated with tech, or is that when it actually broke off?
Oh, well, basically, I have V1 in 2020, which is when we started.
Yes.
Right.
There's 28 episodes on YouTube, at least, that we did in 2020. And then we did 50 episodes in 2021, just of the EV podcast. And then 38 in 2022. Now in 2023, we're on V4, which I had no idea. So,
2 more
congrats,
weeks.
guys. We've made it to V4 of the podcast, combined with V4 supercharging rollout.
Pre-2020, that was beta. It was in beta.
We were in the beta rollout period.
Yeah.
That's right. But let's rip the Band-Aid off, Randy. I'm ready.
Oh my goodness, we're doing this? All right.
I need the update.
All right.
Or the lack of update.
Where is it?
Let's just where is it? Let's just say whether this episode is a full episode or not, I can't stay long.
Wow.
I have a scheduled appointment.
Wow, we shouldn't have talked so much off the record before we started recording.
No. That was very important stuff we were talking about.
No, it wasn't.
And that's
This
why
is more important.
That's why I wanted to do tech first.
How long do you got?
I have to leave in less than 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Wait. No.
I thought you were going to say like 5 minutes.
Wait. No, not 5 minutes. I have to be there in less than 2 hours.
But it's like a hour-long drive or something.
Give me a second. I don't know.
How long.
I've been watching the clock.
Randy's
but-
going to have to leave halfway through this podcast.
You should have
to
cut
go
us
pick up
off
his
that
wife.
off-the-record talk. You should have cut me off so much
I've been
faster.
well. Initially, I was like, "All right, let's do it." But
You knew the entire time when we were like, "Oh, we know
I
there's
told
an
you,
update.
Drew.
We know
I told
there's
you
an
right
announcement."
before, because we had a decision: record tech or EV first. And Randy's like, let's just do tech first. I'm like, oh, okay, so you want to starve us of the EV news. Where's the
There's
why?
something.
And you're like, yeah,
We're waiting.
I have EV news. I did not lie. I come back with stories. But okay, so I'm being told whenever we're done. Technically, we should have been. Hang on, I'm asking the chain of
The
command
House
here.
in the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Jeez.
but
So-
let me tell you this. Yesterday we got a text saying it arrives tomorrow. It's ready. It's ready at the location. They said and we can schedule for pickup that evening.
Wow. Oh my God. We get to capture the final moments.
This is the last
leading up to.
This is the last time I will be model wireless, like in literal hours, and for the first time on the panel, a multi-EV household.
Oh, right. You've got us.
While we were recording tech,
First again.
I will always be first, Mike. So, I
Oh
It's
my
here.
God. This is exciting.
they like
Last day of March. We're recording this March 31st.
March,
by
and
the
I was
way.
like, they reached out, like, come get this thing because it looks good on them.
End of quarter push.
End of quarter push. It looks good on them. We get
Yeah.
the tax credit. Oh, I'm
yeah.
so
Finally.
excited.
That's something I was going to ask if, like, you still didn't have a status on. I'm like, well, at least, like, it got pushed
No
to-
status
was
means
it
it's
April
still
18th or whatever?
qualified.
Yeah.
Well, they posted an update this morning. That's what Mike was alluding to.
Oh, I didn't
The
see the
update
update this
is-
morning.
Oh, the update is April 18th. Is now when I
So
think
tax.
all the cars.
Tax day.
Yeah, that's when they'll issue their guidance. They still haven't said who does and doesn't qualify, but they said they'll have an answer by April 18th, which means you've got more than 2 weeks, Randy, of wiggle room, but who needs to wait around? You qualified for the old timeline. You're getting this thing in March.
Yes, and
Wow,
like now,
that's awesome.
like I was skeptical the whole time. I was like, maybe we should just cancel the order. It is a lot of money. La 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 la.
No.
But then it's like tax credit and all.
It's so cheap, Randy.
This is the most affordable Model Y I could have ever gotten, and
Yeah.
my wife gets the experience that we all got to experience ourselves, and that she wanted to know is what's it like to, one, buy a brand new vehicle, two, with Tesla. That's an experience. That whole thing is cool. I documented my experience.
It's a lot of fun.
We all like. I'm so excited. I now I'm ready. It's like a $50,000 car. In these times.
After all the price hikes recently, that's a deal.
Especially afterwards, like I got equity in the car already. They're doing to the car what they did to my Model 3. Like there's equity if I want to just turn around and sell it. We can make money right now.
Yeah.
I'm so
That's awesome.
excited.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You're
So
definitely
excited
have to
for you
compare
guys.
what was like for you picking up the 3 and then picking up the Y, just like what the experience has changed over time, because you got it way before us, and then now you're getting
I remember
one,
that video.
a bit after us. So yeah, definitely bring back your thoughts and feelings, even though it is technically your wife's car.
no, it's
the
not.
family
It's
car, being the
technically
wife.
ours. It's
Okay.
realistically her car,
There, okay, fine.
but my name
Realistically,
is on
her
it.
car.
Wow.
But
So by the time everyone is listening to this podcast, Randy will have his car. That's the announcement.
Yep.
suck it, people
Does that
who
mean
aren't
we
listening
can-
to this live. It was not, so ha!
Does that
Which
mean
is
we
all
can
but
what?
3 people. That means we can clickbait, right?
Yes.
Like
Clickbait.
Randy got his Model Y, but you watch the show and it's like, oh well, he's about to get it. But by the time you're listening,
No,
Yeah.
you
There's
started
a
it right
Chance,
off the
Drew.
right
Whereas
off the
if
chat.
we go for like at least an hour, I think an hour probably is. I don't know how long it takes you to get to the nearest delivery center, Randy, but there
An
is
hour.
a chance if you leave at a reasonable time during the podcast or an optimal time during the podcast, Randy, you could take delivery of the Y as we're finishing. So it would technically not be clickbait because you did pick up your car and you do have your car.
The only
It's
way
just-
this works is if one of you screen records the Discord call and I call you guys in at the location. Live on site, we're here.
whoa!
Keep it special for you and Brittany, I'd say.
Are you gonna film it though?
You know, I didn't even think about that. I'm glad
You might want to decide.
I'm glad I got this on the charger. My phone is charging right now because I would bring this phone. And
You're welcome to upload it to the Tesla Experience if you'd prefer, but I'm just saying if you want to post it here, that's fine too. Get us closer to that 1,000 sub mark,
Guys,
whatever.
did you know that over 70% of you are not subscribed? Be sure to hit that. I hate that. I hate that stinger, but it's like we're so close. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, guys.
I would say get us to 1,000 so that we can get the monetization, and then unsubscribe.
That's right.
Like leave.
That's right.
I don't care.
Because then
Like, it's
YouTube
not
doesn't care
important
at
to
that
me.
point.
Yeah.
We have the engagement. We just don't have the numbers. That's so weird. I've never experienced that. We have the watch time, but not the numbers. That is new to me. That's new to a lot of people. But anyway, guys, I'm about to be a multi-Tesla owner. And that's...
Wow.
I want to pivot just for a second because I want to share a thought, an experience I had in Colorado. Not with the Rivian. We'll talk about that later on whenever that's relevant. But...
Not anymore.
I fully appreciate. I went a couple days more than half a week of having a rental, and we rented an Audi, by the way.
Oh.
Colorado does this thing, and they've expanded throughout the country, but Audi now does this thing because they bought the company that used to do this. It used to be called Silver Car, and you can rent an Audi, a silver Audi, for a very affordable price. And that's how I used to get the rentals, because when I compare that to something at the airport through Hertz, Enterprise, or whatever, it was actually cheaper to get the Audi. I'm paying for it in gas, but the Audis, I'm like, cool, I get to pretend I'm bougie like that. So I did that for years. For years we were doing that. But now it's owned by Audi, so Audi themselves do it. It's called like Audi on Demand or something like that. It's still an amazing like experience if you want to go through a non-EV rental. I recommend Audi, but I was paying like maybe somewhere between $35 and $55 a day for the rental, and we had an SUV.
Wow.
So it was
pretty good.
Not that bad. Yeah, it was really good. And I was using CarPlay. Bro, when I tell you that, like, I don't know what happened. I do not like CarPlay.
That's interesting.
Let me tell you.
I was gonna express my concerns after seeing the CarPlay and the Lucid, actually people testing it and using it. I was like, ooh.
CarPlay's
Yikes.
map, like when I use CarPlay for the map first, especially because it's a multi-widget, thing as one of its defaults. I actually have a problem with Apple Maps in CarPlay because I can't zoom out, tap, drop the pinpoint. But like I'm so used to my Tesla doing this for me. That's like, oh yeah, let's go right there, and I can't do that on Apple Maps or CarPlay's Apple Maps. I'm like, what is happening right now? And then it doesn't tell you what city you're in when you're passing through it. And I realized that I've been using that feature on my Tesla for years.
Yeah.
Where are we at? Oh, we are in Denver, or we're in Castle Pines. Blah, blah. No, I had to zoom out, kind of guess it. I think this is Colorado Springs. It was
I wonder
so
if they
weird.
do that in Android Auto though, because I believe Tesla just uses Google's Maps.
They have their own skin over it.
Well, yeah, they have their own filter on it, but I wonder if Android Auto has some of that.
I refuse to check.
CarPlay doesn't.
We'll never know.
You can't just borrow your mom's flip phone or whatever, but that's fine.
Actually, that's how she does her in her Subaru, which is weird. But I actually appreciate the fluidity of my Tesla, and the longer I was away from it, when I got back to my car and I drove it, I was like, oh god, it feels so good. I love driving my car. I'm like, and now we're about to get the why. The interface is 10 out of 10 would recommend on Tesla. I used to be like, I wish they put CarPlay on Tesla. I completely 180 that after and
Randy's reversed course.
I
quite
100%. Hey, wait a minute. But and I wanted to say this on tech, but I'll say it here really quickly. I actually hate iOS 16. I've had nothing but issues, I realized, over the last month and a half. I'm having issues.
Wow.
And now those issues has echoed to the CarPlay, which means everything I need to do to route things was frustrating. And I miss the simplicity of type in right there, pop, route, go. Tesla got it right. The best UI is Tesla's UI. And I am sorry I ever doubted it. But I come back with some
Have you
thoughts.
gotten I'm curious if you've gotten the email saying if you're going to get the software version with the vision-based park assist.
Nothing yet.
Okay, well, it should be out by the time you're taking delivery, which is in a few hours, because I've been seeing lots of people test it over the past week or week and a half that Park Assist has been available. So I'm going to be curious of your thoughts on how well it works with the occupancy network and everything. You're going to be the only guy that can test that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. It's going to be so bad.
It doesn't look good so far, but I mean, there's certain things it can do that ultrasonic sensors can't, like the curb detection. When
completely
parking.
missing the mark.
I saw people running into cardboard, and someone was 2 inches away from the car in front of them, and it said they had 17 inches. It was funny. But I've I've not gotten to talk to someone's like firsthand experience on it, so I'll be very curious because you clearly know how it works
Yeah.
on your current vehicle,
Yeah.
and you've had that for years, so you've got the standard down. Someone going from ultrasonic sonar, park assist for all these years, and then switching to the occupancy network pretty much right away. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited to compare and contrast the like what's changed. Like this should be the revitalization of the Tesla experience in theory, because it's like there's so much content there. But as I was saying off record, like I it's so hard to find the time to do that with child, with
I
infant.
understand. Yeah.
I would love to report back. So maybe what I ask from you guys is, not all at once, but give me, when you have an idea, hey, text me. And because my head space might be so distracted that I was like, oh, that's a good point. Let me see how the park assists work. Or let me see how what the pickup is between performance and the let me see what the cabin space between the two. Here's what it's like for a guy who's 5'6". I actually got more room to whatever, like cargo.
Yeah.
I'm personally curious about cargo. The whole point we even did this is like, dang, we need a car now because cargo is stressful with an infant. So I have little things I want to do, but throughout this journey now, you guys think of something, hey, between this new one that might have hardware 4 or doesn't, I don't know, between that and the Model 3, what do you notice about that? And I'll be right back. And maybe I can, do one of those
Leaves in the middle of the
autofocus
podcast.
styles. Hey, what's up, guys? Maybe I'll do one of those. I don't know. I haven't really thought that far through with it, but I'm excited to pick it up for putting the content stuff to the side. As a tech enthusiast, I'm excited to see what has changed over the last 4 years. Besides the obvious USB-C wireless charging and the things that I can touch and feel.
Oh, that's right. They didn't even have that when you last got your car. That wasn't a default.
That was not the default.
So much has changed.
Matte black,
Wow.
everything on the chrome. There's no chrome, Like there's so much. So besides the visual obvious stuff, there will be performance differences because it's a performance vehicle. But then they've also made it smoother, a smoother ride.
The suspension
is different.
I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that too, coming from a Model 3 with the 18-inch wheels moving to a crossover with 21s?
21s.
Yeah. Much bigger. That's for sure. In more ways than one. So, wow,
So
exciting time. This will probably be the only EV delivery of the year on the podcast.
Yeah.
Most likely.
I don't think I'm buying any EVs this year.
Me neither.
Unless the Cybertruck comes
That
out
should
and it's
be it.
ready for delivery. In which, I don't know if you heard, Randy, I've kind of flipped on my opinion on taking delivery of a Cybertruck now. So,
Yeah.
But speaking of Cybertruck, apparently it's hanging around the Bay recently, which I love.
Yeah, there's been a lot of sightings.
Yeah, I haven't seen one myself, but I love the fact that everyone's getting so excited to the point where they're thinking that it's going to get produced in the next 4 to 6 months, like in terms of like being delivered to customers. In which I'm like, just because they're roaming around Fremont and Palo Alto and San Francisco does not mean that immediately production is happening. It's quite
To me, that's evident that it's not that close because they're not using the GigaPress for it because that's in Texas, not Fremont. So.
Yeah, no. What is in Palo Alto is the engineering headquarters where they're doing a bunch of testing. So it makes sense why it'd be roving around there because they're testing the crap out of this thing. I mean, like, I don't know if you saw one of the videos of it basically doing quick jerks to the left and right just to...
Must have been on FSD beta.
That was really cool to see. But at the same time, it's like, this thing's not coming anytime soon. Like, anytime soon being like in the next few months. It's gonna be
I don't think so. It's funny that they kept saying mid 2023. It's like I don't know if they'd say that now, because that's like 2 months. we're gonna be in the middle, and that's okay because I'm gonna be gone a lot of this summer, so I don't want there to be anything too massive or major happening. Same thing with the Apple
I have to
headset or
interject
whatever.
really quickly.
Go ahead.
Understandably, I'm going to be very glued to my text. With
Yes.
that family group text right now,
Uh-huh.
someone just said in the family, send us pictures when the sexy lineup becomes more complete today. So-
Oh, you got to get the S and the X after
They
this.
they
So that
want,
way you can.
maybe I take it to one of the supercharging states, but I just realized that we are one step closer to completing that lineup. I don't feel comfortable
That's
buying
true.
any more of the lineup because now that's expensive stuff. I wanted to ask you guys in your own, in context, talking about certified refurbished and bop, 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 would either of you feel comfortable buying a used X or S if you did
Yes.
not rock with your vehicles that you have today? Is that a vehicle that you guys are interested in? It could be any. When I say used, it could be as new as still 2023 or 2022, or as old as 2014 or 15. If so, like, what's your ideal used premium EV? Because I asked, not knowing the answer myself, I've contemplated this question. What kind of year or version would I want? Do I want the one that gets free supercharging? Do I want the one that has a bet? Like those type of questions. I think, but I want to know your guys' thoughts. What are your guys' thoughts on used S and X specifically? What would be your ideal lineup?
I mean,
You want to go first?
yeah, I guess I can go. I mean, I would probably not. I'd rather save my money and get something else. If you're opening up the floodgates to the refresh, then it's a consideration at that point, and it depends on what the price is. But otherwise, I'm not really a fan of the vertical screen. The free supercharging for something that only gets like 230 or 40 miles of range at this point isn't.
I haven't supercharged in like 4 months now, I think.
Yeah, but still, like, I prioritize more of the upfront range that you have at like 90 to 100% versus, yeah, you can just supercharge anywhere, which, yeah, I get that. But still at the same time, yeah, I'm not really a fan of the interiors in the old S's and X's. They're neat, but they're I think it was brought up between Sandy Monroe and Elon at one point. Like, their seats are very iterative process and getting better and better. And the most recent 3s and Ys are like the best seats that they've made. I guess the S and X as well. But like those old seats in the S's and X's, I've experienced myself, aren't the most comfortable, even though it is a luxury car. They're not really the most comfortable. They don't really have materials that I find appealing with like kind of the cloth and leather mixed. I'd rather just either all cloth or all leather. Specifically perforated would be nice. So that way you have cooled and heated. But otherwise, yeah. No, probably not.
So what I'm hearing you tell me then is that if you were to get a used one, it would be a 2023, 2022?
Yeah. If there was the opportunity where there was like a demo model that was severely price cut.
Yeah, but then right there, I was about to say, but then the price is the factor there. So, and I present this question to you guys with the context that you can get it at a reasonable price, but kind of hard to say that for 2022 and newer.
Yeah. What about you, Drew?
Okay.
I don't think I'll ever buy a Tesla new ever again, personally. So
Wow.
I think there's a good chance a used X would be our next Tesla, potentially.
Okay.
Whenever that day may be, I don't know. Could be 20 years, could be 10, could be 30. I don't know. But we're very happy with the car we have currently. Like, if something were to happen to it right now, like tomorrow, if it got an accident and it was totaled or whatever, my go-to replacement, assuming insurance and everything came through the way it's supposed to, my go-to would be like a standard range Model 3 from 2020 or 2019. I've seen those going for like low 30s. And I'd be really curious to see how those battery packs have degraded. And because I don't, like I said, I haven't supercharged in 4 months now. So to me, the long distance drives are just a matter of like, well, how much do you want to pay for the car? And how much time is that going to save you on the trip? If that saves you, if by saving $10,000 the trip takes an extra hour and a half, I'll take a longer trip. That's not a big deal to me. And I'd love to be able to say like, oh, I got this car for 30 grand and there's no gas and whatever. So, but assuming nothing goes wrong with our current Model 3, if I ever upgraded, it would be because we want something, or side graded or whatever, because we want something that offers more than what the 3 has by a long shot. I don't think I'll ever buy a Y, at least here, maybe if we'd moved out of the country or something, but the Y is just too similar to me to the 3. Like I don't value the extra storage space that much. But if it was like, okay, we've retired, or we've saved up enough money that we can afford a bigger vehicle that's more of a people mover because we have more kids or something, I would be super interested in a Model X 7-seater with a yoke, just for the fact that that's got the windshield design I love. That's got the ventilated seats. That's got the landscape display that can orient itself back and forth. It's got the rear display for the backseat passengers. And I love those self-presenting Falcon Wing doors. That is like the closest I could think of is like, what's a Tesla I would buy after this one? Because I don't ever visualize, no matter how well YouTube does, I don't think we're ever going to buy like a $80,000, $90,000 car. But if there's a 2023 long-range Model X for like $55,000 used in the year 2035 or 2040, like way off into the future when everyone's V5 supercharging and has their cyber trucks taken over, their cyber SUVs. I already feel a little bit weird driving the new car. I kind of like the concept of trying to get by with less, and that's why I'm downgrading stuff and trying to work with. But the problem is all the decent EVs with like reasonable charging speeds and reasonable range, those are all still very new in the car market today. I'm very curious to see what the market is like when there's decent charging speed EVs, but they've got lots of miles on them and they've been around for years. So how do they age? Out of warranty? What do they cost? And that kind of thing. But yeah, I would absolutely consider probably a used X. I don't think I would get a used S myself. I would rather to me that's just a bigger sedan. It's like if I'm gonna go big, I would rather go all the way to a crossover. And if I'm gonna get a crossover, I want it to be very noticeably different from our last sedan, unless it's just a money-saving technique, in which case I'll buy the cheapest Model 3 available that's used and still has supercharging access. But yeah, I'm not too concerned about like max range number, but that's still my dream Tesla is yoke, white interior, probably red exterior, and lots of seats that can fold down so that you can lay down all the way in the back if you need to on like a camping trip. But I know a lot of people hate the Model X, but I just love the aerodynamics of it. I love the visibility of it. I've sat in several. I have a kind of a friend of a friend that had a Model X that we got to ride around in, and I was like, oh, this is so nice. Just that windshield going all the way back and the doors just closing all by themselves. I was like, I'm in the future. And I don't think I would have that same wow factor with an S. So there's your long answer.
I like it. I currently, for the right price, would get the X because so inconsequential to the whole thing. I like ventilated seats, which is ridiculous when you can remotely cool the cabin down before getting in. It makes it kind of obsolete, but I still like the airflow on my tushy. It feels nice.
I've never experienced that. I've never tried it.
It's a beautiful feeling.
I'd love to.
Feel free to censor this or whatever if this is too crass, but to prevent swamp butt from happening, like it is on those hot days. Whoo, there is no better feeling than your lower back and your tushy just being. And
it's only getting hotter, so that feature is going to become more and more helpful as the years go by.
Especially when you get the warming steering wheel and it starts to warm up.
Yeah,
and you get little ventilation going on your back and stuff. It's a nice bougie irrelevant thing. But what I like about the X is that it is complete contrast to the Model 3. and it would be my Millennium Falcon. It would be my, that is like the big one that we use that for everything, big projects, big trips, big everything. And the Model 3 is the day-to-day vehicle. The Model X is the one when like you're gonna show up and you gotta have like a 3-piece suit on or whatever. I'm taking the X, baby. I want people to. It's our version. We're not saying this out loud, but it's our version of those guys that like to show up in Cadillacs. That's our Cadillac, and that's why I like the X. The S.
I love switching to the Model 3. Like, one of my favorite things that I still do every day is just walking away from the car and it locks itself. Boop. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And the Model X takes that to the next level by just walk away, don't even close the door, and it just closes itself as it locks. And I was like, oh, I would love that. That to me is like non-essential, super luxury, super bougie, which is why it's like at some point in my life, but I've got my whole life to own it. I don't know. I don't need that soon. That's like that's the dream car thing. It's like at some point in my life I'd like to own one, but that's not a priority now at all. That's a way down the road thing.
Utility wise, it's perfect. Aesthetically, I think I like the S more, but the S is just too close to the 3 for me. That's why I wouldn't pick it.
Same.
I got what I want for a sedan out of it. I know it's a large as opposed to a midsize, but that to me not that much. I like the cabin space. I like the comfortability that you can have.
And I wouldn't mind a heavily degraded battery pack too, because the long range X has a
those suckers. Yeah, those
range.
Things go. Yeah,
I would with like let's say, because 80% is usually what people say is like the minimum. Let's say it's got 21% degradation on that battery pack. That would still be more range than what I currently get with my Model 3.
Jeez.
Which is why I think the price would come down a lot on that one. They'd be like, oh, the battery pack only charges to 275 at full. I'd be like, done. I'm in. That's good enough for me.
So, Drew, you don't care about LFP anymore then? Or you don't care about 4680s? You don't care about the battery cells themselves? You care more... What I mean is... In the,
it's a factor.
In the theoretical next vehicle you would want to get used, you're not thinking about the cells first. That's not your headspace. If you were to get an X, you don't. That's what I mean. Like you don't care about that. You can have a 2170 lithium ion battery that just does its thing, and you're like, well, it's an X. I don't care.
Well, it's just a factor of like if I know it's a nickel-based cathode, I would like to start with a higher range because I know I'm not going to get the 100% every day. But no, honestly, I don't care that much about the chemistry or the cell form factor, but I also don't care that much about the max range number either because, like I just said earlier, I would like to try living with a sub 200-mile range Model 3. A standard range from 2019 with a degraded battery pack. I would like to see what it's like road tripping with that. And
just get a Bolt. It's cheaper.
No. I need NACS. That's one thing I won't budge on. Okay. I don't want to live with any vehicle that doesn't have NACS. And charging speed.
Yep.
Far more important to me than the chemistry or the max range number. Both of those, I think, are probably overrated. A Model X with 1865 cells that at full charges to 275 at 80%, that's going to be like math. Let's do it. 221. That covers daily driving enough for me. But my hope is that the market cares more about that so that the battery packs with all the degradation get really low resale value. Someone's like, oh, it is like 81% battery health on this Model X, so I'm going to sell it for $50,000. I'd be like, sweet, that's awesome. I'll take your heavily degraded battery pack. I don't care which cells are in them. But if it's an LFP Model 3 used in the future or something, like either this vehicle goes kaput or gets in an accident, if I'm in the used market and I'm like, oh, this one costs a little bit more, but it's LFP, I may be willing to, I don't know what that gap may be. Maybe it's $2,000, but I'd be willing to spend a little bit more knowing that the used vehicle has an iron-based cathode because it means it'll last longer, and I can charge it to full frequently. But yeah, all the nickel-based cathodes are all identical to me. It doesn't really 1865, 2170, 4680. It doesn't really correlate to any kind of real-world difference, at least right now. Maybe 4680s will prove to have super high cycle life, but I don't think they will, personally, based on the way nickel-based batteries work. So
I'm not a believer in any of that stuff no more. I'll be honest.
it doesn't exist.
It just,
there's no batteries.
It's just numbers on a paper now. I don't believe in it because even then, like, they always give you most optimal at its best when it's like range.
The resale value will be interesting though, like to see what the market prioritizes. Like, will these vehicles depreciate less than the old vehicles simply because of the charging speed? Like, people will be willing to pay still quite a bit for a used S or X that has a lot of miles on it for the sake of, well, but this one does 250 kilowatts. The old one's maxed out at like 150, 120. That's going to be a lot slower of a road trip, and people aren't really paying attention to the range as much. They're just looking at how long are the stops, and it would be cool to see over time how they perform. But given the inventory of the S and X being so high, has a lot of people wondering, will Tesla keep making the S and X? They're just
so
going to
many
keep
times
reducing
they
the
said
price
they were going to stop. They're like, it served its purpose. We keep it around strictly for nostalgic reasons, and it's like, I get it, but Apple killed off iPod. So
we were joking about them killing it off
they did.
For years, and they did eventually do it. So maybe, depending on what Tesla's priorities are, they might get to the point where they decide it's not worth it. But I question if that would increase or decrease the resale value if they weren't in production anymore.
I'm going to tell you... Oh, go ahead.
Increase.
I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to have to dismiss myself for a few minutes here because, I'm doing live tracking here. I'm not leaving. I'm just going to be AFK for a second. But before I do, I want to share a quick story. My time in Colorado, I have been exposed to so many non-Tesla EVs that it was breathtaking, actually. I was overwhelmed. I was like, wow.
More than the geography.
No more was it prevalent than all the Rivians I finally saw. The lack of me not seeing any Rivians in my lifetime since it's been out made up for it over this trip. Holy moly.
So happy you finally got to see so many.
I all but sat in one because I posted a few when I was just on the road, but then I saw them parked. I got to talk to somebody who they, like, why a Rivian over
an owner?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Which I'll share that in a moment. But my takeaway is I am more in love with the Rivian now than ever before because of the utility purpose of a truck. If you wanted a truck, you can buy one. It's there. Used market. You can, like, unlike Cybertruck, like I say this with the asterisk of the elephant in the room over there, that we just don't have a Cybertruck to compare and contrast. And
elephant.
I picked the brain of a truck driver. Be like, well, why Rivian over a Ford F-150? And respectfully enough, they're like the vision.
They were all exploding.
They're like,
in price.
the guy said I put my faith in a EV only company because they have more to lose, which means they will back the product more. Guys, I seen an R1S and an R1T in person. I don't know which one I like more, to be honest, anymore. I like them for different reasons. I did not know I was going to cross that bridge. I thought, R1T. I don't know, man.
I know.
R1S looks nice. Here's the thing. I say this with, like, Rivian is almost perfect if they would just change, to the they got to drop the charging.
CCS.
CCS is not sexy. I will forgive slower charging. I will forgive range. But I can't,
oh yeah, totally.
But I can't forgive efficiency. And I told you guys a few episodes ago, maybe more than a few. I said my next vehicle will be probably a Rivian, and I was sticking to that. Well, that was before the Model Y, one. But two, now that I've actually got to see it and spent some time with it, with all these different variances of it, I don't want anything to do with like Electrify America or like I didn't get to experience that yet, but we talked, I think last time I was here, so 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I want it to be as standard as gas stations. Now more than ever, efficiency is the most important thing to me. Preconditioning the battery, like the way Tesla system communicates with location, preconditioning the battery, doing this, and like it's so clean. I don't. If anything, this is more of me leaning in towards an Aptera as a non-Tesla hypothetical. I don't want to support something that doesn't support the Tesla chargers as the primary.
Yeah.
NACS, yeah. The North American, I call it the universal. It should be the USB-C of cars. None of this lightning.
I look at it that way.
It should be USB-C. And I was indifferent before, but having time to like just observe non-Teslas, like I think for me, I can't go outside of Tesla unless another company decides that we're going to adopt this standard, because that is the vein, that's the blood of the vehicle.
Yeah,
and that's just as important. That's the most important thing. I need, if the battery's the heart, how we get the blood to the heart is probably, to my case, the most important thing. And I would let go of a Rivian or an anything. Mike and I, hypothetically thought about Volvo as I would let go of any of them if it means they wouldn't adopt this standard. Makes me that much more excited for getting the Y now. And I'm saying this as a guy putting my money where my mouth is. I support this ecosystem the most. Opening up for other people, cool. If you just use that standard, don't swap out ports and that. Don't do that. Just let's make it a law. If I run for president, that's the law. That's what I'm campaigning on. You have to use this. But what about global? I don't know. This is it. We have to use this standard. That is the only thing that matters now. And I have that with fresher eye. For once, let me look at this with my own eyes. I understand more than ever now. So,
could I make a pitch?
Sure.
Enjoy your Tesla household today and tomorrow and for the next couple of years. Enjoy that NACS across the board and appreciate it. Enjoy your performance and your long range. But whenever the time comes in life where you feel like we need a pickup, we need a truck, we need a bed or whatever, the Y probably, because it's newer, that can be your road tripper. That's got NACS, that can supercharge, that's got the autopilot and everything. And then one day when it's no longer special or as nostalgic, you can turn Phoenix into your forest green R1T, and you don't need to road trip with that. You don't need to use Electrify America. And way down the road, there will probably, even if you need to road trip, there will be a Rivian Adventure Network and enough Magic docks or V4 superchargers that you don't need to touch an Electrify America station a single time to go cross-country with the Rivian. And then you'll have your road trip vehicle that's more efficient, more aerodynamic with the supercharging, and your Rivian for the getting work done, hauling stuff around or towing across town and stuff. I don't know. Maybe you need to road trip with a truck. Maybe that's a use case I haven't heard of, but I think
what do you
a lot
define
of
as a
people
road
can get
trip?
by.
What's the mileage? Or
If you need to DC fast charge on the trip, it could be a really short road trip.
Okay.
But if you have to stop and DC fast charge,
depleting the battery at least one cycle before, or more or less one cycle before having to charge.
you need to stop before you can get to your destination,
that
just
will then
purely
consider-
for charging.
Okay. That's a road trip.
That's when it, like, I think the Rivian will have high enough range that you could drive around town or, do a dump run or haul, I don't know, plants or trees or soil or gravel, whatever. I don't know where you're going to be. Wherever you are, I think the Rivian would have enough range that you could, like, exclusively charge it from home. Yeah. And it's just a little point, like, just grab the level 2 charger, plug it in, and that's all. There's no CCS app swipe to activate crap, or this station says it's online when it's not. But I could totally see a point where having the 3 and the Y is just a little too redundant.
It is redundant.
Want something to mix it up a bit.
I don't want to let go of Phoenix, but I've also entertained the idea of the next vehicle we would bring into our life, which one would have to go first. And Brittany says, we would let go of the Y. Phoenix is paid for. We already have it now. It's here. It's done. And I was like, I agree with you. But Randy, who bought Phoenix, wasn't even thinking about kids. My priority, I wasn't even thinking about leaving San Diego at the time. I was, a government worker doing this thing. We had our life. We had a routine. I'm not 2019 Model 3 Phoenix Randy anymore. And that's something I've accepted. And the Model Y is the most important vehicle to us out of the Model 3. And that's me putting my pride to the side. Oh, but to ask me to let go of it in lieu of something else, especially a non-Tesla, makes it's hard tasting medicine to hear from you, Drew. But I understand where you're getting at with it, and maybe I reluctantly will be.
I think if you test drove one, it would seal the deal. I bet if you got in one and drove it around, you'd be like, oh crap. Because here's the important thing to remember, and maybe this will help you make this horrible financial mistake later in life. Like, the most common company that Tesla employees go to once they leave Tesla is Rivian. It is practically a Tesla company without Elon, without the full self-driving stuff. And it's a bunch of former Tesla employees coming together to say, let's make an adventure vehicle and let's make an off-roading vehicle with more storage space. It's more utility focused. And you talked about earlier R1T versus R1S. The only reason, both have perks, both have advantages and disadvantages. The main reason I say R1T is at gear tunnel. There's no gear tunnel on the R1S.
You're right.
And you've got a much bigger tailgate to extend for storage. And I don't know, the R1S is cool as a full-size.
But the thing is, you and I like the Tacomas. Mike, he stepped
we
away.
Do, yeah.
We like the Tacomas, where Mike was like, nah, that's too small. But I before electric vehicles,
I like that form factor. Yeah.
I was sold on my next vehicle before the Model 3. Getting a truck was going to be a Tacoma. So you and I are very paralleled in that headspace. Mike, do you not like Tacomas? Refresh my memory. Am I misrepresenting you? That I'm a Tacoma guy, but you're not.
Tacomas are pretty neat, in my opinion. The issue,
he appreciates them, but like what he needs out of a truck, I think.
Yeah, there is actually. Right? It's funny that you bring that up. I think a couple days after this podcast gets posted, Toyota's supposed to make an announcement about the Toyota, whether they're refreshing the gas version or if they're announcing an electric one. It's supposed to happen on the 4th, I believe, of
It'll
April.
Be disappointing, I'm telling
sure.
you now.
Probably. They've teased some electric Tacoma or refreshed Tacoma in a few of their wide shots of their whole fleet that they build. And it's got
We took out the battery in the Prius. It's a full gas car now. Congratulations.
You led Toyota. I forget who it is now. It's not Mr. Toyota anymore. It's someone else. But once again, no. I think
Mr. Toyota.
No, quite literally, the last name of him that he had was something
I know.
Toyota. But
it's just funny.
He was meant to run that company
until he got outed because they didn't like the way he was directing it. Anyways, no,
they looked at his resume. They were like,
"Oh, yeah.
His name's Toyota."
That's it.
I think the Tacoma is neat.
The same.
I think it just needs to be a little bit more competitive. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to be. It's the top dog. But, I mean, I think it needs to reinvent itself because it's kind of just been sitting on the same design language for a stupidly long time. And if you're looking at Rivian as, like, probably the top dog in that kind of sized truck, on the electric space, in which that's where all vehicles are kind of heading towards, you'd
Yeah.
probably want to get ahead on that and redesign it, make it more alluring, make it more cheap, and I don't know, just make it a Tacoma because it's kind of the golden standard. So
Is there a way
look
to
right with
make an electric Tacoma that doesn't look like the Nikola Badger?
yes.
I'm trying to visualize it and I can't do it. I'm like, oh, you could. That's a Badger.
It looks like a Rivian.
I think the Rivian looks cooler.
Mike,
personally.
Drew made a very persuasive pitch to me that I think you stepped away and didn't hear the rest of it. He said,
Yeah.
do you want all the perks of a Tesla engineer without the problems of the leadership? Guess what? Without FSD,
Because Rivian is just a bunch of former Tesla employees. For the
And
most
I
part.
don't care
There's a
about
ton of
FSD
Tesla
anymore.
engineers.
Like you said all the
Yeah.
right things to me.
RJ has so much more like. Okay, you're gonna hate this example, but I'm gonna use it.
Okay.
RJ is the guy you bring home to mom. You know? Elon is the bad boy that you don't tell anyone about. You know, like. RJ has all of the swagger and all of the charisma,
The family
and he's a lot
values.
more. Yeah, he's the kind of guy that you'd enjoy at Thanksgiving dinner. Elon's the guy you try to sit away from at Thanksgiving dinner because he's going to talk about
Aliens.
something political. Yeah. He's going to talk to you about something you don't want to hear about. RJ
Open
is
source
the guy
algorithms.
that's just like, yeah, we can go off road. Let's go camping. That sounds fun.
It's like
Yeah,
Craig
enjoy
versus Tim Cook.
Yeah, pretty much.
I
But,
want
like,
I want to introduce you to my Craig. Never mind my Tim.
that's why really my fundamental only problem with Rivian is the lack of knacks. That's really my only issue. But
How can so many
Other than
Tesla employees be so nearsighted about that? What do they know that we don't? Is it a
they're
cost?
probably paranoid about how it will affect current day Rivian resale value, or they've already put in the Adventure Network with CCS, and they're concerned.
Pardon my
that if
French,
they tell,
but laissez compétent. Who cares? Like, rip the Band-Aid off. If anything, it incentivizes raising the prices. Like, oh, because of it, we're going to now charge $90,000 or whatever. You know, like, if anything, I feel like you would attract a better clientele of customers.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think so. But they
cares?
probably just care more about their early adopters than I do. I'm
There's
the
an
kind of
effect.
people that are like, if
What's
you
this
bought,
effect called?
I was like, if
The
you bought a
Norman-
Rivian, Norman, yeah,
Osborne?
if you bought a R1T, like now, when the company's still a startup and they're basically a year and a half, I think, into production, I'm like, those people are early adopters.
True.
Like, they're the kind of people that buy vehicles and then swap them out for a new one a year later. I'm like,
Or
I'm
they're
not too worried
YouTubers.
about, yeah, exactly, which the YouTubers are going to keep buying the new versions and keep buying, So I'm not like, I bet their mindset is, well, we have like tens of thousands of customers that have purchased an R1T, and they're going to feel like the Adventure Network doesn't prioritize them if we switch to NACS or something. So they're concerned for PR and everything and trying to save face. And I'm just like, your demand is going to take off, and the people who haven't taken delivery yet are probably going to be really grateful that they got NACS, because that's faster speed, better network, and everything. That seems to be one of the most common reasons people are selling their Rivians used, is because they bought them and they like the truck, but the charging network has been so crap.
But if you
So
know
to me,
the-
this is like the
If you know the iPhone is going to get USB-C, and that's the port that you want because it simplifies your life, why
Mm-hmm.
continue pushing out iPhones with Lightning when you know it's coming? Then, if that's we don't want to hurt the people who already bought that when that wasn't our port, but everybody wants that, like that. They know what you want, and you'd be more incentivized. I'll take it a step further. If these early adopters and YouTubers and stuff are just going to keep buying it anyway, I don't see in their own little network, because that's a tax bracket that we're not in. I don't know how to spend that type of money, but I'm sure there's a community of people like, listen, sell me the car. I don't care. I'm going to charge it at home. I'm not a guy who does road trips. I'm not a guy who blah, blah, blah. I'm good. Just I will buy that off of you. And they can offset their costs for getting to play with it for a little bit. And then they're like, cool, now I get the car that I actually want. Why? But I don't make this case just towards Rivian. We've done this for, like, rip this Band-Aid off. I say about Apple, I say about Tesla, when they're like, oh, maybe they're waiting to roll out Model Y with 46. Like, who rip the Band-Aid off? If Texas is meant to do the thing, rip the Band-Aid off. If Rivian is meant to have the next, rip the Band-Aid off. If Aptera is meant to, if anything, I say Aptera is the most efficient company at this point. But all for the sake of fear of what your client or your customer base is right now. Maybe am I nearsighted as an executive that if I was in that position, I'd be like, listen, guys, at what point is Rivian considered not a startup? At what point do we we're moving on to the next stage? At what point do we say...
When they're profitable, I think.
Shoot, I mean...
Maybe that's the
Poor
the
Tesla
point
was a startup for a long time then, but...
Well, I just felt like that was the traditional startup excuse. It's like they're burning through cash, and then they'd always go, well, they're a startup. They're getting off the ground. Once it's profitable, it's like, oh.
Man, I'd say some of these legacy automobile guys are startups. Then they're burning through cash like it's nobody's business. It's okay. We got government subsidies.
If you've been burning cash for 50 years, then you're no longer a startup. Yeah. You're
a failed experiment.
Welfare program. Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you for letting me talk your ears off, but I'm going to jump off. It is time.
All right.
Okay.
Drive safe.
Good luck, Randy. He's out.
Wow. Kind of jealous.
This is the last time you're the only Model Y
owner
on the show.
I guess this is maybe how Randy felt when you got the 3, but it's exciting. I'm not saying like I'm sad or annoyed or jealous in kind of a way. Jealous in the way that he's getting a really cool car.
Yeah.
Not in the way of, I was the only Model Y person on the podcast. And, no.
You'll always be the first Model Y owner.
And Randy will always be the first Model 3 owner. So,
That's true. We can't take that away from him.
It's a whole stair step of us one-upping each other and buying these cars. I just
like that none of us really got the same trim. Is cool. I'm on rear-wheel drive. You got long range Y. He got long range 3. And now he's got performance Y. So none of us are overlapping too much. We've all got different experiences.
So that means I'm forced to get a performance Model X then.
No, you're getting the Cybertruck. I think that's the next thing.
I did want to mention on the Rivian front that
yeah,
I think it's mainly just a time thing. It might be inevitable for them to get next. Maybe that's just a little conspiracy that I've got brewing in my head. But maybe it's just because they're already making sacrifices on so many other things, like the camp kitchen and the gear tunnel shuttle.
I was sad about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my one
giant
selling point with when we went to the first mile event. It was like, there's a kitchen in this thing, and you don't even have to buy the kitchen. You can get the shuttle, and you can put whatever else on it. It's a nice, easy way to get everything out. It's like, yeah. So who knows what's going on with that? Because I remember they said, I think it was maybe in the same statement or maybe something along the same lines that they've got with the tonneau cover being they're trying to re-engineer a solution, and maybe they just don't foresee one coming about anytime soon. So they're like, let's just cut the product from the whole entire page, so that way we don't get any more orders, and then more people asking, where is this thing? Either give it to me now or give me my money back or whatever. They would rather just, maybe we'll provide it later in the future, maybe we won't, and hopefully they do. But
they didn't make a statement about it, as far as I can tell. They didn't say, we're going to come back to that later. It just disappeared. So, I mean, it sucks because I did think that was one of the coolest selling points of the gear tunnel in particular. They were, like you said, they always were happy to flash that off at the first mile events and on all the website pictures and stuff. But I think I've always said this with Rivian. Maybe I'm too biased in their favor, but I think it's probably the right call considering the financial situation they're in. It's that classic, like, you got to eat your vegetables right now, and the kitchen set is kind of dessert for them. I think it's like, it's fun and it's cool, but there's so much financial complexities right now with the ramp. They're really burning a lot of money in their earnings reports. It's amazing that like I think they're close to burning as much or spending as much as Tesla, despite being a fraction of the size. They spent, it was something like $3 billion last quarter. It's like $1 billion a month, and to not be even really close to profitable yet is like, I mean, they've got a lot of cash, so I think they can afford to keep doing this, but it is kind of scary just to look at those numbers and be like, ugh, okay, the margins are negative on the trucks and SUVs, but we're burning this much, and it's, you know, it's a giant pile of cash, but it's also covered in gas and burning. So it's like,
It's not about the money,
Let's be
Drew.
cautious.
It's about the message.
Yeah. It's about the message, right?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense, honestly.
It's hard,
right?
but
when you
I get
start
it.
a company, an EV car company, and then say
Yeah.
we're going to make EV trucks, there's going to be a lot of material in there. And they're like, oh, we're also going to make an EV SUV. Okay, a lot more material, cost, and everything else there, the tooling, the production.
They're just very complicated. But I mean, it's because they're so functional, right?
Oh, yeah.
They have so many doors and pockets and everything. Like, it's a very complex. It's probably, according to Monroe, he said that it probably cost them like $110,000 per truck. Like, these things are really complicated, and that's why people love them, is because they can do so much. They're the Swiss Army knife. But
Right.
yeah, it's gonna be a trick to turn that business profitable. But I think they've got time to figure it out, and a lot of talented people there.
They've got
So
the right support
I have a lot
for
of
it,
faith.
too. I think if
Yes.
they didn't have Amazon behind them, they would have gone under probably years ago, just because they would have done the
Probably.
math and realized we don't know where we're going to get this money. With Amazon being the
Yeah,
infinite money cheat in
right.
society right now, it's like, okay, well,
Uh-huh.
I guess we can't really go under. If we do go under, they'll either bail us out or we'll just keep on making vans for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
But I guess they have enough funding from them to where they can continue. And hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
that's not the case where it's an infinite pool of just shoveling money out from the pile and into the coal furnace and all that.
Right.
Rather
Yeah.
something
So
else.
they got to cut corners. They got to get real picky about what they fight on. That's why I'm hoping. There's been rumors that Rivian wants to get into e-bikes, and I'm hoping that's not true. I mean, it's a cool idea. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I wouldn't like another e-bike option from a Rivian or whoever, but I'm just like, that's not what they should be focused on right now. I was more excited and optimistic when I heard. Did you hear about their sound system?
Yes,
update?
They did an Apple in the right way, kind of. Or no,
Yeah.
I guess they just pulled an Apple. It wasn't even the right way. It's just they pulled an Apple
Yeah.
in the fact that they just took their speaker system that had so many speakers and whatever. They're like, let's just get rid of
It was
this
a
one.
Meridian.
Yeah,
It was a third-party speaker company, and now they're like, let's not use the third parties anymore. We're going to switch to our own. That's a lot cheaper.
Okay.
It's more efficient, less wiring. So when I saw that report, I was like, sweet, like, great idea. Like, this is what you need to do more of, is figure out how to reduce cost. And they even said, like, we tested it with customers, and they said they preferred the new sound system, Elevation Sound, I think they called it, versus the Meridian.
Of
I was
course it's
like,
called
even if they
Elevation
didn't,
Sound.
I think it's a good call. Like, we got to listen to the sound system in the Rivian at the
was
first
decent.
time. It was insane. It was amazingly good. And I was like, yeah, I mean, for a truck in a company that's struggling to figure out how to become profitable, you know, I think it's a good idea to kind of cut costs on, is this a necessity? Do we need to make sure this is on every truck, or could we scale down the audio a little bit and still have a decent sound system, but also save a bunch of money on production? I was like, yeah, you could. I would be okay if it sounded worse, personally. Like, I have the partial premium sound in my Model 3, and I've heard the premium sound in the Ys and 3s, and I was like, you know, I can hear a little bit better. I'm not saying it's not better, but I understand why it's not like night and day, in my opinion. You know, it's not like, oh my God, I can't listen to anything. It's, for them in their position, it's a good call, I think. So
I agree. I think this is hopefully these next few years are kind of the age of Rivian cutting costs, which is kind of a bummer in regards to like getting rid of accessories or colors or anything else like
Yeah.
that. We'll probably
They got rid of racks too, didn't they? On the configurator?
I think so. Hopefully, maybe.
The spare tire, I think, is what it was.
Could have been that too. I haven't paid attention really to the Rivian configuration page just because I've been busy with other things. But
Yeah.
Even so, I think they really need to figure out how to make their company profitable. And then once they figure that out, it might just be hopefully the runaway case that we've seen with Tesla, where they're like, oh, okay, so we have so much money that we can splurge here or we can cut costs here. Cut costs being like cut the price of the vehicle, so that way it's a lot more attainable and they can compete with Toyota even more. But who knows? So I don't know.
I kind of see the
a new way.
R1T and R1S like the Model S and X.
Yeah.
Like it's the high price, more luxury starter vehicles, and then down the road they can focus on their own Model 3 and Model Y, which would be the R2 platform, I guess. And I guess those I'm more excited for because they'll probably target a much wider demographic. And I think, based on what I can tell, the long-term plan is to become profitable with the R2s.
Sure.
And R1T, R1S are more just like establish the brand, get a production line going. And
I'm excited to see if they
people.
make a small, like an R2T, basically just a small pickup truck, and see how that looks as, like, is it going to look closer to R1T or is it going to look closer to like Truckla from Simone Kurtz here in San Francisco?
Right. That's cool.
It would be interesting if they went kind of like the El Camino route.
I'd love that.
Making it a little bit more sedan type-ish, but like more like workman truck, I guess is what I'm trying to allude to, is like it's only a bench in the front. So like 2 to 3 people and that's it. And the rest is bed. I think that'd be great, especially for if you wanted to push that into what you're already dipping into with your delivery vans. Now you've got utility trucks for, I don't know, any myriad of blue collar jobs. So
I keep thinking back to my first vehicle, the Ford Ranger, because that was such a small truck, and yet I could get so much people and stuff in there. Like, it was a decent sized bed, and I don't even know if it's legal or anymore, but it could seat 5, even though it wasn't like an F-150 or a Tacoma, like with the full 4 doors. It was like asymmetrical suicide doors. You know, where the back tiny door would open the opposite direction, and 2 people could sit behind the bench seat facing each other. They weren't facing forward. It was kind of crammed, but there were many times me and my friends piled up in that truck, and then I would throw camera gear in the back and stuff. And I was like, that was just such a small, like, it was smaller than a Tacoma. It could park in tiny parking spaces, but it had a lot of room, and we had a rack on it, and my dad would move canoes with it and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I really think those smaller trucks are pretty handy, and I'd love to see Rivian get somewhere close to that. There's probably more legal things preventing the old-fashioned. It was so dangerous. If you tried to open that back door, your seatbelt was attached to it. So if your seatbelt was still connected and someone opened that door, it would literally just crush your organs. And that happened to me several times. I'd be sitting there, they'd open the back door, and it's like, I don't know if this is legal anymore, but yeah, I'm very curious to see, because Rivian to me is almost like Tesla reincarnated with a different ideology. It's like they have that focus on software, like doing more things through the app, and they've got a really clean, minimal UI, but they've got the more off-roady, campy mindset. So I'm like, this is like Tesla if they didn't care about robo-taxis almost. It's like, if Tesla didn't have the robo-taxi vision, they'd probably make something kind of like the Rivian. I always say people are like, why doesn't Tesla make a normal looking pickup truck? I'm like, that's the Rivian. That's essentially what it would have been, because it's a lot of former Tesla employees, a lot of the software team bringing over very similar, like you turn on Driver Plus the same way you turn on Autopilot. You've got all your controls behind that wheel. You got your scroll wheels side to side. There's so many similarities. It's like, if you wanted the non-Cybertruck Tesla. That's basically what it is. So once they have the funding, once they are more profitable, I'm curious to see how they diversify. We know what Tesla does. Tesla is like take over the world, sell the most cars possible, cheaper, 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 cheaper. What would Rivian with the more adventuring off-roading mindset do once they have funding to diversify and offer more vehicle options at lower pricing and stuff? I think they've got a bright future, but
I think so. I think they just need to get everything in order.
yeah.
You made me or reminded me of a post I saw on Twitter. I couldn't find it, but someone parked their Ford Maverick next to an F-150, and it astonished me just the size difference between the two.
Yeah.
And they're both trucks.
It is
like
huge.
They both look like
Right.
big trucks, and I've walked up to a Maverick before. I'm like, it's a decent size. Like, if you don't have an F-150 sitting next to a Maverick, you don't really think about how small the Maverick is. It's just
Right.
a truck body, so your mind immediately goes to, okay, it's a truck, whatever. I haven't gotten to sit in one, but just comparing the
I
two,
like that size, yeah.
it's amazing. So I think we can definitely enter that age, at least with EVs, especially being kind of limited by batteries right now, to reinvent kind of the truck culture in regards to like it doesn't have to be huge. I'd like it huge if it like provides more range and all that, but otherwise it doesn't have to be. It could be small. It can satisfy many other people's needs. Heck, the Maverick is ridiculously undersupplied right now for customers. There's not that many. You can't buy one. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think you can even. I think you can put in an order for one, but it's going to take you a decently long time just to like get any indication from Ford saying, yeah, well, we're starting to build it. So it's like, oh geez. But
yeah, it's kind of a crazy market.
Rivian was thinking about that with the R2. I think it'd be a great competitor against the Maverick, or if anyone else came around. I mean, heck, we haven't heard anything from like Lordstown in a hot minute.
I know. It's weird.
I'm interested in seeing.
They started production and then they recalled everything, and then it's kind of quiet now. It's weird.
Right. It is interesting. I wonder what they're thinking right now. Like, do they maybe consider adopting NACS, or maybe that's just the furthest back thing right now, and what's on the forefront of their mind is how do we even make the truck?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah, Lightning is focusing on that now. Did you catch those price hikes?
I think it's like, isn't it $20,000 more than it originally came out with? Like, so the Pro, I believe, came out with like a $40,000 price tag, and now it's around 60.
Right. Yeah, I think it's over 60 for MSRP. That's before, dealer markups and stuff. So it's really on par with Rivian pricing now. I mean, it's basically the same ballpark.
Jeez.
And yeah, it's kind of justified now that we know the margins on the Lightning and how bad they are. Like, they're losing so much money per truck, but still, this is classic supply and demand, I guess, because there's still a ton of people ordering them, but slowly realizing that we don't have enough for everybody, so we can afford to hike prices like this.
Yeah, I know the two aren't mutually connected or like directly connected, but it just makes me think about what that price for the Cybertruck is going to be then. Because if the lowest tier Ford F-150 Lightning is starting at $60K, and that's like, what was that, 230 miles of range or something like that?
Pretty low range, and that's a dual motor.
Yeah, it's a dual. No, is it a dual motor or is it a single motor?
I think all the Lightnings are dual motor.
Interesting. Okay.
They're all wheel drive. There's no like tri-motor or quad motor or single motor. That's why I laugh so much when people refer to the single motor Cybertruck like they think that's gonna happen. I'm like, they couldn't even do a single motor Model Y. They're barely doing a single motor Model 3. And people are like, well, that single motor Cybertruck will probably be close to the originally promised price. And I'm like, it's not gonna happen. That's not gonna exist. But I think that's why I've heard that the Lightning actually gets better energy consumption than the Rivian.
Probably.
They're very close.
It's a lot lighter than the Rivian. And
but it's bigger, and it has 2 motors instead of 4. I don't even think the Lightning is necessarily more aerodynamic. I think it's mostly just the weight of the battery pack being a lot less, and I guess that big frunk is so empty. But
I guess so.
like people have gotten lower energy consumption on the Lightning, but I think that part of the reason the Rivians is so bad is because of that quad motor powertrain, and now it sounds like they're switching to their own in-house. I forget what it's called. Something. It's not Endurance. That's
no,
Lord's.
it's not Lafayette either because that's Aptera.
No, that's Aptera. It's another
Enduro?
E. I think it's Enduro. Yeah. Rivian has their first in-house designed powertrain on the dual motor coming out just in a couple months, I think. First on the Max Pack, and with their new sound system, supposed to use less energy, and so it seems like they're paying attention to all those things. So I don't think that the launch edition and even the current Rivians being made had a big focus on efficiency.
They were just focused on getting them out.
Right. I think quad motor is slowly going to prove to be not that important to more.
It
and
seems
more
like it. It seemed like everyone was focused on it for such a long time, with Rivian being like, "Yeah, we need 4 motors on this truck," and then Tesla's like, "Yeah, we're gonna need 4 motors on this semi," and the idea that Roadster might also have 4 motors, just because, I mean, Plaid has 3, so
yeah, you gotta keep going
probably,
somehow.
Yeah, it needs to go somehow to
Right.
top the Plaid Model S, but it seems like everyone is getting around with 3 does the trick. It doesn't need to have 4 wheels all having independent motors. Yeah, 4 independent motors on each wheel. You can get around to 3, and it's not an issue too much. I
think after watching the Rivian had footage of them testing the dual motor in Moab, like they were off-roading with it and stuff, and it's still great. Like it can still handle really steep climbs and inclines. So that's what got me thinking, like, what's the number of use cases where quad motor becomes really helpful? I know they exist. I know it's like individual torque vectoring when you're like doing these off-roading things, but I'm like, the vast majority of these truck buyers are not doing that. The most are probably going to care far more about range when towing on a road trip, and the quad motor isn't helping with that. So I'm excited for their launch of dual motor, and I think there's a very good reason that they could only get the Max Pack working with the dual motor and not the quad.
Right. I can only imagine. just think about all the options that Rivian has considered.
I know, right?
And pitched. It's like,
so many trims and colors and
just
wheels.
Simplify it off at this point to where, like, you got quad motor with large pack and dual motor with Max Pack, and then if someone wants, was it a dual motor with large pack or standard pack, go ahead. Like, it's all yours, buddy.
They're kind of scrapping things left and right. I think they'll probably scrap some more as time goes on. Like, I know a lot of people probably won't like this suggestion, but I would not be opposed to them scrapping quad motor and just going all in on dual, because they've already said that there's a high performance dual motor and like a standard performance dual motor. So they can already like build in some margin of like pay more for extra performance or something.
Right.
But I'm not saying sell them at a lower price. I'm saying just keep prices the same, but increase your margin by making the truck simpler, doesn't cost as much. Everyone will probably be really upset because they're like, wait, I thought that was going to be a thing. But desperate times. So I'm like, yeah, just go all in on efficiency now. We've kind of proven that these trucks are capable and they can go off-road, and then let the quad motor be kind of that limited edition type early access thing, and maybe when you're more profitable down the road, you can bring it back. But I think it's just kind of working against them for the most part.
Indeed. I don't know if you heard about, kind of switching gears a little bit, I guess switching drive modes, I guess.
Switching drive mode.
I don't know if you heard about Ram talking to some of their dealers. And mentioning in some of their concept ideas a mid-sized truck with that's electric. That is kind of heavily inspired by the original concept image of the Ram Rev and all that. I don't know if you saw that on your end and what your thoughts were. Because for me, it perked my interest, but again, I got heavily disappointed by the 1500 once it came. Like they're like, here's the concept, and it's like, oh wow, they're really going for everything, and then a month later,
really cool concept, but
and
it's
then
the exact reason I was skeptical.
It's just gonna be a Ford F-150 Lightning situation where it's just
we just have slightly different headlights, basically.
So would you consider, or at least does this mean anything to you? I guess is what I'm getting at.
I guess similar to you, I feel like hurt before, so I'm skeptical of any kind of hope coming from that brand now, because I'm like, anything you try to get me excited for, I'm going to be really cautious on. But in general, I do love the idea of pursuing more mid-sized trucks, because I do think as a country and as a culture, we over-obsess on big trucks, and a lot of people just associate big with functional, and I don't think that's always the case, and oftentimes it's not the case at all. People just think, oh, it's a big truck because I use it, and then they hardly use it, and they could probably get the job done with a smaller truck in a lot of instances. And I just have a hard time believing the most popular truck is the F-150 or the Silverado or the Ram, simply because of their size. I think it's more, there's a lot of people buying them as fashion pieces, just they like the way they look. And I pay attention to this whenever I'm on the freeway. I see a big truck drive by me all the time. I'm always looking. How many people are in there? What's in the bed? Usually nothing's in the bed, and there's one or two people in the truck. I'm like, all right, same thing could have been accomplished with an Aptera or a Model 3 or whatever. And honestly, not that different in price, considering how much people pay for those big trucks. So it's not a direct line down the middle of like who doesn't need it and who needs it, because it's a matter of, well, sometimes I utilize it, but not every day. In which case, what number of times do you fully utilize it is justified? Like once a week, or is it once a month, or is it twice a year? But I just think that it would be great to push more heavily the mid-sized truck market, because probably you can get those more efficient. You could get better range out of them with smaller battery packs, increase the affordability, which is very important right now in my view, because it's kind of a really sucky time to be a pickup truck buyer, at least new, because it's like the electric options are super expensive, they have long waits or dealer markups, and the range isn't great and the charging network isn't built out. Or you can go gas, but we kind of know that that's on its way out, and that's going to cost way more to maintain over the long haul. So it doesn't feel like a great idea to go either way. Like, I understand why people say I can't buy a Rivian or a Lightning right now, and I also get why people don't want to buy a new gas internal combustion engine truck. I'm like, you're kind of picking your poison with either direction, but finding ways of scaling up production of more pickup trucks for cheap, I don't think that's a bad idea at all, considering right now we're already prioritizing like low range trucks, right? Like, that's probably your biggest reason for not making the switch, is just like, we need that range for towing. That's why you're still on the Ram. And none of these electric trucks really are prioritizing long distance towing capability. They're all just like 300-ish is good enough. And the charging network, we'll get to that later, I guess. So if we focus, it's like, okay, you're willing to prioritize the lower range use case, but I feel like there's not enough like, okay, well, let's start with the smaller trucks, because those can use smaller battery packs, and those could target more affordable audiences, and then work their way up to the bigger trucks, or the trucks once there's more cells available. So maybe it's a margin game. Maybe they just don't want to sell them cheap because they know they're going to lose more money on them. But yeah, if you could make a Ram that's close to the size of a Tacoma or a Maverick or something.
They already have, by the way. It's been 11 years, but that was the Dakota. The Dakota was competed against the Colorado, the Tacoma, and all that. And Ram just has left that hole open this whole time. So I think, in recent years, there's been talk that the mid-size / small truck war is brewing. Basically, it's all coming back. All these huge legacy automotive titans are going to be button heads, but with tiny trucks now. So I guess
I think that's a good compromise, because I tend to think that we buy more trucks than we should as a culture. And, you know, it's a free country. You can buy whatever you want. So I'm not saying we should ban it or anything, or it should be illegal.
ban trucks.
Ban all the trucks. No, I'm not that crazy. But I do think a good compromise is, well, let's at least try to make the most efficient. If we're going to have pickups, let's make the most efficient, economical trucks possible. And that's why I'm a big fan of the Cybertruck, is they are putting a much bigger emphasis on energy efficiency than any other, with the aerodynamics and the voltage, the higher voltage architecture. And I'm like, okay, that's a step in the right direction. But I'm also of the camp of like, I really want to see Cybertruck, but on a smaller scale. You know, Maverick, Tacoma sized Cybertruck. How efficient could that be? Could you get a pickup truck with like over 100 miles per gallon equivalent? That would be amazing. Like, Rivian and Lightning aren't really even close to that right now. But if that was possible, that would be really impressive. I'd be like, okay, now buying a pickup truck is basically the same carbon footprint, same energy consumption as a lot of SUVs are. It's not like this big step change, more of like, well, we're going to be dragging this parachute out the back everywhere we drive, and it's just dragging all this air everywhere.
Right.
So trying to convince people to get more into efficient, functional designs, I like that. So hopefully this one's legit.
I do think if they focus, or the way that I want at least the, what's it called? The transition for a lot of these legacy auto companies that love making their pickup trucks to EV. I think an easy way to get through it is the Rivian approach, which is just mid-size / small truck that has good range, or decent range at least. And that way you can learn from that platform and go from there, whether you're developing the technology or you're working with suppliers that are developing the technology. At least you're starting with something that is small, but like it's understandable to like have small range or mid-range in terms of, I guess, the range you can go.
Right.
And just
it's
go
reasonable
from there, rather than like the way that we kind of have been going right now with Rivian. Well, I guess Rivian, but Ford and GMC and all of that so far are just like, yeah, let's just recreate what we have already, but like the big ones. It's like, focus on the small ones first and then go to the big ones, so that way you've nailed down the technology a bit more, rather than kind of starting in the middle of the technology tree and not having really any of the fundamentals that you have gotten before. So I think there's room to grow, and there's room to learn from this. But I think if Ram, what would be nice is if they focused on that Dakota and then went to the 1500, would be a better approach in my opinion. But I mean, I'm just some lowly engineer who's not in the automotive space.
No, I agree with you.
So
I think it'd be refreshing, because everyone else seems to be tackling, start with the F-150 and then work your way down, you know, the big truck size, and then, because that's the most popular,
your way
I guess.
Either way, whether you go down or up.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything about up yet. Rivian doesn't want to go up. They want to go down. And
I like the idea of starting with the smallest, because that's where you'd get the best efficiency. And then as cell chemistry improves and availability improves, work your way up.
Exactly.
I wish they'd do that. Yeah. That would be at least a different approach, opposed to let's just do the same thing everyone else is doing, which is kind of what's happening.
Right.
But I'm not getting my hopes up, but I think that might be a better way of going about it than starting with the big one.
Indeed.
Can I mention, you're just talking about Rivian and how complex the lineup is with all their options. It's like the polar opposite approach at Aptera, which I think is really interesting.
I was talking about them with my coworkers, because they haven't heard of them, and I was recently talking about them with them. And they were just so confused by it. And I'm like, they're a really efficient company. And they're just like, what? Like, is it efficient enough to where they're that type of startup where like you do your startup work like kind of at night and then you go to your regular job during the day? I'm like, not really. I think it's just more of a hyper focus on efficiency to where there's so much work just to get that efficiency nailed. But sorry.
And the launch edition approach, I think, is kind of genius. Like, this is why I think Aptera deserves success over every other startup. You know, Lucid has all these paint options and powertrains and 5 different tiers of the same sedan, basically. And Rivian's got all these colors and wheels and racks and everything. Aptera's like, okay, we're going to have the launch edition, which is one color, one interior, one battery size, one powertrain layout, one solar system. It's like all of these vehicles, other than the little engravings for the accelerators, are going to be practically identical for the first, like, I think Chris said like 20% of the reservations have switched to launch, which
Wow.
means
That's a decent amount. I mean, it'd be
it's
better
a pretty
if
big
it's more,
chunk.
but
It could be higher by now. He didn't have it off the top of his head, but that roughly translates to the first 8,000 vehicles they build are all of identical spec, which is
that's such a cost
probably
savings.
yeah. I was like, how simple does that make manufacturing, right? Like, that is such a polar opposite. That's better than Tesla, really. Tesla didn't even do that with the Y or the Semi or the, you know, they were just like one trim, and I'm like, I love that. They just told everyone, here's the spec that we're gonna build first. If you want your car sooner, switch to this one, and that's gonna simplify so much on the manufacturing floor for them. But I'm also, I don't know if we got to talk about it, but I'm really excited that they're like OpenPilot compatible. Did you see that video?
I unfortunately did not find time to watch it, but from as far as
It's cool.
I can discern, is it's basically they've got someone else doing their well, it's OpenPilot, so they
Yeah.
got someone else doing their self-driving tech, and
Yes.
just because of how do I want to put this, just the geometry of the vehicle, but then also what they could take advantage of with that form factor enables them to easily integrate, I guess, anything in there just because they've got room for sensors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I guess I don't know where to go besides it's kind of obvious to me in the regards of like, yeah, of course they'd easily be able to like integrate some type of self-driving, even if it's just advanced cruise control. Like,
right.
it's something that can easily be done, but apparently you're saying that it's even more than that.
Well, it's interesting. I actually learned a bit about it yesterday. I found this channel. I'm trying to find them. It's called Aptera something, really something short. It's like Aptera updates or they had like less than 100 subscribers. They were pretty small, but
Oh wow.
I'm looking in my history right now, but Aptera Brief, that's what it is.
Okay.
Aptera Brief, really cool small channel that deserves more attention. He did a breakdown on how OpenPilot works. So I thought it was really clever, and I learned some things from that video, but essentially Comma.ai is the company, and they don't there's legal reasons they cannot incorporate OpenPilot into just as a standard feature. So in case you're wondering, same with Aptera, same with any car company, you can't just buy a car that already has OpenPilot in it, because that's when the brand, whether it's the manufacturer or Comma.ai, would be responsible for what the car does, and they don't want to be liable.
Sure.
So the self-driving software is actually free. It doesn't cost anything pretty much as long as you buy this special hardware, which is just a computer and some cameras, which does it does the POV camera, and it does the, you know, cameras that analyze the roadway and everything. Very similar to how Tesla FSD Beta works. It's just accessing cameras. You plug that into the car, and you're just using free software. So that's because Comma.ai is mostly handling all the software. They alleviate themselves liability wise. Mm-hmm. So basically, he was saying that the Aptera will be super like OpenPilot compatible. In other words, they'll have a place where you can easily dock this camera system, just plug it in, but you will still buy it separately from Aptera for liability reasons. But it's a very impressive self-driving suite, because it's basically the same exact approach that Tesla is doing, crowdsourcing data. It uploads all of that data that your self-driving cars are taking, to their servers, and they have neural nets and they have machine learning algorithms that analyze it, correct it, and essentially it's the next best thing opposed to just being able to access Tesla FSD directly, which you can't do. But this is as close as you could get to a crowdsourced like fleet data training self-driving system. And Comma.ai has reported that they're testing the functionality of automatic lane changing and even turning on city streets and roundabouts and stuff. So the overhead for OpenPilot to improve and get probably won't get as good as FSD beta, but close, like is built in there. So from Aptera's perspective, I think that's a genius way to offer level 2 is to just say our car it will have like a perfectly shaped hole under the mirror where you can dock this little camera system, which is what they showed off in their video with Chris, who we corresponded with many times. He's from Comma.ai. That's where he worked before Aptera. And he showcases it working with the beta prototype, and it's keeping him in between the lines, and it's doing adaptive cruise control and everything. And what I was excited for is that just relies on eye tracking. You don't have to keep your hands on the wheel.
Nice.
So to me, I'm not a huge believer in robotaxi, so I'm like, this is already better than autopilot in my mind. Like, this means I just get to sit there, and as long as my eyes are on the road, it'll do everything. Like, I got so pumped watching the video for that. I was like, now it's got the range, it's got the efficiency, and it's going to have the autonomy of just a really, really solid level 2 system, which is, I think, what most people are pretty interested in these days.
No one's looking. I mean, everyone wants level 4 or 5, but
yeah,
that's not technically
just
possible.
doesn't really exist.
But having a solid level 2 is definitely the way to go right now.
Yeah,
because everyone's trying to do something with level 3, but it's they're having a tough time getting there. And
Tesla's is $15,000 or $200 a month, whereas this, the little computer you would buy, I think would be around $1,500 or $2,000. Wow. So it's a bit of a bummer that it doesn't come like free with the car, but it's cheaper than FSD, cheaper than enhanced autopilot even.
It'll be cheaper than autopilot ever was, which hopefully I guess we're hoping that it's around like a $1,500 price tag, and that's what they achieve with their pricing for the hardware, I guess.
You can buy the hardware today, I think, on their website. So that's not like hypothetical, but I just think that was a really smart and efficient and like cheap way to incorporate a level 2 system. Like, I don't think there's any way you could have done it for less.
It's very much in the vein of what Aptera is all about. It's just cost effective, easy to integrate, but just efficient as well. Right? It's just how can we get into the market as low cost as possible, but still provide a decent product? And if that's what
and there's cars that already have this that people have tested. I've watched videos on it, and some say for the basic autopilot stuff, it beats Tesla's system. Like,
I recall some video I saw. I think they were testing in Europe or something like that. The capabilities of a Comma.ai integrated vehicle, I guess hardware integrated vehicle, or I guess software, because the hardware is a separate purchase. But and that did amazingly. I forget, maybe it was like in 2019. It started sprouting up because people were like, look, it's so much better than autopilot or whatever. Like, the autopilot can't do this.
Right.
Like, yeah, I guess so. So I guess they have had time between then and now to even develop even more. And just thinking about between now and whenever Aptera comes onto the market, whatever improvements they will have there, just solidifying the level 2 experience and then moving on to level 3 whenever they get to it. Just kind of no-brainer with the choices that Aptera is making, which I mean, maybe not no-brainer, but like it makes sense for their philosophy. And
yes, because it'd be so much more expensive to try to develop your own in-house system from the ground up, and you're always going to be miles behind where other companies are because they have more money and training and data.
Cars in general.
Aptera's
got 0 cars on the road that
right.
our customer what's it called customer owned, I guess.
Yeah. And they
basically-
just get to leapfrog all that development now and just
yeah.
say, yep, we just easy way to plug in that it's a computer. I'm looking at the website right now. It is $1,500, but they'll just make a little slot in the car that's really easy to plug that in. And then it's blowing my mind right now imagining it. Okay. Assuming they don't hit the range numbers, right? I'm assuming the worst. Let's say the 1,000 mile range translates to like 700 real world.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of driving 700 miles without touching the steering wheel is like
it's a bit mind blowing.
that's kind of insane. Just sitting there the whole time, just like hands crossed. Because that's like my biggest annoyance with autopilot right now is like I have to keep my hand there, and that kind of ruins the illusion, especially when family or friends are in the car. You're like, the car is driving, and they're like, yeah, but you're still holding the wheel. Like they don't believe you, or like, just look at the line. See, when it's blue, that means it's driving. And they're like, what? But if I was just sitting there with my arms crossed, or like my hands back like this, and I'm just watching, and it's doing everything, I like, that'll be so cool. I'm so grateful for the funding they're getting too.
Sure. As you can tell, I'm not as privy to the information as you are, or at least plugged in to the situation there. But does Comma.ai's software for their autopilot or safety pilot, does it also do stuff similar to what autopilot does for Teslas, like parking itself, or at least, I don't know, being able to summon in a way?
That I'm not clear on. I'm going to assume no, based on what I've seen. I think it's mostly meant as like a lane keep feature that doesn't hit what's in front of you. But I've seen the company posts updates on things they're working on, and I think the most recent updates was they're working on lane changing and that kind of thing. So I think they're tackling more of the navigate on autopilot type market, not so much the
rather than vehicle static. Okay. Neat.
Which they could probably get around to, but I think they're fundamentally limited because their system is all using cameras that are right into that little computer that you mount behind your mirror. So it does not access like the backup camera or blind spot cameras. So that might make things like auto park or summon kind of complicated to integrate.
You can only go forward and not backward.
Yeah, that could be it.
Interesting.
I think maybe if you back into a parking space, maybe they could build in a way for it to see outwards. But I'm willing to take that loss for the sake of hands-free autopilot. Would you take that? If you could not have to keep your hands on the wheel, but you don't get auto park and summon and smart summon, would you do it?
I haven't been able to use auto park at all because I'm on the beta.
Me neither.
So it's just been a headache. And then
I had full self-driving for 1 month, and I used auto park once, and it was really bad and annoying.
You took a video of it.
think yeah, I think we did it together when we met up once, didn't we? Remember that video? You had to go you had to find two cars next to each other. It couldn't rely on the lines. But once you drove by them, the first place we met up,
oh, that's right.
you drove by the two cars, and the little P showed up, and we hit it. And it took like a minute and a half to be like, backing up. It was really slow. So
I recall now, yeah.
I'm not sold on auto park until it can do it like as fast as I can, because it's not, unlike autopilot or whatever, lane keep. That's something that a lot of people are doing like for long periods or like hours out of the drive, is just sit there, keep it between the lines. That gets really tiring, making all those little micro adjustments. Parking, usually once you found a space, which is when it becomes available, that takes like 5 or 15 seconds maybe.
It depends on the situation, especially if it's parallel parking and all that. But
oh, that's true. Yeah. But
or if
I just feel like it doesn't take up that much time relative to lane keeping and stuff.
Sure. I think lane keep is a better approach to go for, I guess, in terms of priority. Lane keep is definitely higher up compared to try parking backwards or forwards, or I don't know.
Especially with how wide the Aptera is, those big wheel pants on the side, parking it's going to be... I'd be a little hesitant letting a computer try to park something that big. Right.
Immediately gouging every
Yeah.
single vehicle next to it. Yeah. I would, though. It would be nice for, I don't know if Aptera would ever consider it, but integrating some security system like Rivian and Tesla, being able to have a Sentry mode of sorts, so that way, or gear guard, so that way,
right.
people aren't messing with your very, very efficient, and it's not like super expensive, but at least it's a very unique product that if it gets wrecked, you're not going to see
will catch eyes
for a very long time. And it'd be nice to have some security system so that way you don't have people sitting on your solar panels and breaking them. I mean, I guess they're pretty durable, but at least like I can imagine I don't know, someone keying your car, right? And like you just can't use those solar panels anymore just because they scratched up the surface where it is so it can't see the sun as well.
Yeah.
So now you're not getting 40 miles of range a day. Now you're getting 38 or
probably going to be a lot less popular to have car covers for a vehicle like this because you're going to be leaving energy on the table so people can't protect them. But my only concern, I don't know if I shared this, but I used to leave Sentry mode on even at home because my car's not locked up or whatever. But we realized it uses a lot of energy. Sentry mode. We were doing the math on it because when I went to Florida, the car had Sentry mode on, but it wasn't being driven. So we knew exactly how much it uses when just idling. It was like, I want to say 5 or 6 kilowatt hours like a day. Which, if you're paying crazy expensive energy like I am, that translates to like $1.20 per day. So a month, that's like close to over $30 a month.
Was it actively
just in
recording
energy
everything all the time, or was it
basically? I mean, it's not. It didn't catch a bunch of things, but
okay, that's what
essentially you have to use the. Essentially, you have to use the same amount of energy because those cameras have to be on, ready to record. If nothing's captured, they delete that footage, but there's still 8 cameras basically all looking around, consuming power, and it's not it's not an ARM architecture, Apple Silicon efficient chip. It's a big AMD Ryzen processor powering everything. So I think that would be my biggest concern with the Aptera because it has such a smaller battery pack. If you did put security camera like recording and stuff, I'm not saying it shouldn't be there. I'm just saying they should probably disclose, hey, this is going to eat into your free charging. Like that could easily, depending on how much energy the cameras use, that could turn 40 miles of range into maybe 20 or 15 per day.
I think I'd be willing to take the hit, though, if it means like my 40 miles of free range goes down to 20 just because I've got like the front camera running the whole day. Or I guess if it's just a front camera and it's only taking like, I don't know, a couple miles off the 40 miles, I would definitely keep it on all the time, whatever version of Sentry mode they'd have, because the security of the vehicle is what I'm most focused on, especially with the Y, because I'm like, I don't want this thing going anywhere without me. And I don't want any accidents to not be seen by itself. So having that security is definitely of value to me. So having like an Aptera, which is a very unique vehicle, if it didn't have cameras and like I was worried about the area I was living in, I'd probably install cameras or something else.
That might be their solution.
Aptera home kit or something.
Yeah, I'll just tell you, buy some security cameras if you're worried. But I agree the option should be there because a lot of the time we're comfortable. Like we turned off Sentry mode for when we're home because we've lived here for many months with the car and we haven't had any issues. So we're like, okay, I think it's pretty safe. Plus we do have home security in that. But when you're out and about, maybe when you're running groceries or in a more public place, making sure the car can take care of itself and capture what goes on, maybe just letting it be up to the user, of course. Let the end user decide if they want to record or not, I think would be the best outcome. But I don't know where all the cameras. I mean, there's definitely cameras where the mirrors are because they have the screen behind the yoke that showcases that. So there's 2 cameras there. I believe there has to be a backup camera because of the solar that replaces the mirror. There's probably a front-facing camera, but
It says
I don't
no
know how they're-
front-facing camera on the Aptera discussion board.
Oh, interesting.
Where they said-
so maybe that's where OpenPilot comes in. That's
They'll have, yeah,
That's when you
left, right, and
connect
two
that.
rear, which
I see.
I guess
Wonder why 2 rear. That's interesting.
I've got no clue. Maybe there's one. I think there's one below the charging port,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's probably one.
Yes.
Uh,
Up higher,
up
like
higher.
above the solar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a better viewing angle.
It might just
for
be
the
that,
mirror.
just because I don't know.
So one's a camera for like when you're driving and you want to see who's behind you, and then one's a camera for when you're backing up into a tight space. You want to see how close you are.
That makes sense. Yeah, one would be on the rear view mirror, but it's now
Yeah.
a rear view
Screen.
and
Right.
then the other one just appears on the center screen. So you technically,
Right.
Ooh, you could actually get 2 views then.
Mm-hmm.
For like,
Because like on the backup camera on your Tesla, it's like very close to the ground.
oh my
like
goodness,
you
it
can't
always
see
feels
super
like I'm right
far.
next to the ground. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
get me up higher.
Yeah, that's. I think their workaround, since Tesla, at least right now, can still use a real mirror. You got a little bit of visibility that way, but the Aptera wouldn't have that because of the solar hatch. So
Right.
that explains the cameras. But honestly, I've thought of a couple more questions since our last interview that I've seen a lot of people critique Aptera on, like their skepticism about the solar charging is, well, how much energy would just the HVAC use to like cool it or heat it,
Sure.
and how will that eat into your total efficiency? But I don't know. I looked it up. Tesla's HVAC before the heat pump would max out around 2 kilowatts of energy consumption. And I don't think Aptera has a heat pump, but I imagine whatever they're using has probably got a big efficiency focus for it. I wouldn't even be shocked if Aptera was the kind of brand to say, we're going to have a HVAC that doesn't perform all that well, but at least it consumes fairly little energy. They would rather have worse HVAC than worse efficiency. So I was estimating that maybe the Aptera HVAC system would use about 1 kilowatt when you're blasting it when it's hot out or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that would consume 1 kilowatt hour if you ran it for like an hour's worth of driving, I guess, in which case that eats into your range by about 10 miles. So maybe in a super hot, sunny climate, instead of 40 miles of range per day, it's more like 30 or 25. But I don't think that makes it pointless.
No, I think people might be blowing the fragility of the Aptera out of proportion at some points, where they think like any additional 30-pound weight or
Yeah.
5-minute AC at max
Right.
will like decrease your range by like 100 miles, or maybe not 100,
Yeah,
but like
yeah.
50 miles or something like that. I don't think that's the case. I think the math does check out that, yeah, it's a light vehicle. If you start loading up a whole bunch of weight, it's going to impact it a bit. And the same with if you're running the AC on the coldest setting and it's really hot outside, then yeah, you're definitely going to get a hit in range. But I don't think it's as much as people think it is, or at least we don't know, right? So I guess there is that skepticism and that curiosity.
Right.
But
Well, there's reason to believe it will be more substantial than a traditional vehicle, at
Agreed.
least, because of how little the energy consumption is. So it's like, whatever, if this is twice the efficiency, roughly, of a Model 3, if your HVAC has like a 10-mile range penalty on the Model 3, that would be like a 20-mile range penalty on the Aptera. But again, I don't think they'll have the same HVAC system. I think that they've probably designed one, but that considers that.
I'm just curious to see what it'll be like, because they talk so much about their thermal system of cooling the battery, where it's just
Right.
intake, or like I don't know if they even have any fans, but basically just intaking air, going past the battery and then exiting out. How
I
much?
think it does have active systems, but they're probably scaled down compared to a
Oh, I'm
full-size
sure.
vehicle. Yeah.
It'll be. I think the Aptera will be an amazing test bed at the end of the day for like those that want to take or like experiment with their EV to the extremes, whether it's physically taking it to the temperature extremes of like Canada in the winter or I don't know, Death Valley in the summer and all that, or even just like tinkering with everything, like potholes and everything, physically, but then also software wise, just like how many inputs can this thing take, and just how does the HVAC system or even just computer system react when I do this or that is a little bit outside normal operation, or even going the opposite way, going way too much into normal operation where you're like excessively testing it to like down to like what its intended use is, but an accelerated amount of time to where what would usually be like a 3-year time period of like aging for the car condensed down into like 6 months. Stuff like that definitely piques my interest in regards to how how this product will end up at the end of the day, whether it will be that idea of like this car is very cost effective and can last for a very long time, as EVs are kind of thought of, especially Teslas. But just what things will people think about with this car? Like, what will they think of to subject the car to and go from there? Like, that's where I'm like, there's definitely a lot of opportunities, both as content creation wise, but also just experimental wise in physics and engineering of like what this thing might be able to handle. Just makes me excited.
Me too. I don't know if the CEO said it on or off the record, but I remember him at one point saying it'll be really interesting to see if someone takes a launch edition and like rigs up a bigger battery pack, because they're all about right to repair and making everything easy to access. So he's like, based on our designs, it should be theoretically possible for someone to just take a 100 kilowatt hour pack and, you know, kind of throw it in the
putting an F-150 pack in there, just like,
Yeah. He's like, I want to see what the crazy hypermilers come up with. Like, how much range can we get out of this thing if we jerry-rig it, like, outside of OEM, you know, like, stuff it full of cells and
just put all
knock
the
off
GMC
the mirrors.
Hummer EV's batteries in it, and then maybe a 250-mile range Aptera battery in there as well, on top of the 400-mile range battery.
Take out the second seat and everything. The entire cabin is just stuffed full of cells, and
we've seen what they could do with the Model S already, where it's gone 700 miles with a custom battery pack, but like the thing's stripped out and everything like that. What will this look like?
Yeah, that will be fascinating. Like, can they get it to like 2,000 miles or something on a charge? But thinking about it in the hard weather too is going to be interesting, because I'm sure that its efficiency is going to be more easily affected because it's such a small, lightweight vehicle. But I think the relative efficiency will be what matters. So, like, if you're in Alaska or Canada, really cold environment driving the Aptera, your watt hours per mile may be 220, 240. And you're like, hey, this is way worse than the 100 they were targeting. But it's like, okay, now drive a Model 3 in that same environment. What's the energy consumption of the Model 3 in those hard conditions? Oh, it's actually like 400 watt hours per mile. So even though the range was cut in half by the cold weather and everything, you're still getting double the efficiency of an equivalent, you know, full-size four-wheeled 5-seater. You're getting half that. So that can turn a 1,000-mile range into a 400-mile range in the cold. But hey, what else is going to get 400 miles of range in the cold?
Up there,
that's not going to be possible. Yeah. Exactly.
I also just realized it's going to be one of the lightest EVs out there that can see two
easily.
People and all that. I mean, the Twizy's a great competitor for that, but that thing's a golf cart and only goes, I think 25 miles per hour max or something like that. But I was just thinking, my first car was a Honda Civic Hybrid, and that thing was super underpowered, efficient. It was called a hybrid, but basically wasn't. It was electrically assisted by the 12 volt. And that thing weighed, I think, about 2,500, 2,600 pounds.
Yeah.
The Aptera is going to weigh maybe around, like, I forget what the estimates are, but something
Under 2,000 for
under
the launch
2,000.
edition.
So it's going to be lighter than a Honda Civic. Only has 2 seats, I guess, but like has a battery pack in there.
Still big. It's light, but it's not small.
It makes me a tad concerned about like the crazy winds that go through the Great Plains here in the U.S. Like, it's going to be low and wide, and it's very aero efficient, so I'm sure a lot of the wind will just blow over it. But some of the shear winds, or at least the transverse wind patterns that could blow you off the road, I'm curious to see how that will handle it, even though
Me too.
it's designed for efficient airflow both over the front and the side.
Right.
What happens when wind is hitting at that dead zone where it can't escape upward or downward, and you're getting a bunch of that force? Even if it's escaping up or downward, you're still getting some of that
pressure.
Some of that pressure. So
I was just watching one of their older webinars about that yesterday. They were asking about that. And they kept saying they were very proud of how aerodynamic it was sideways, like even not frontward. I mean, I think you're right. I'm looking at the design right now, and I'm like, yeah, it's still the kind of under fin where the back wheel is. Right. That's going to catch a lot of crosswinds, but the main body of it is very rounded on the sides. I was listening to an interview from someone, I forget who, but someone that got to ride in the Gamma prototype, and they were saying one of the things that stood out to them the most about riding in the interior was it didn't feel like a traditional car interior, because most car interiors are very flat on the bottom and then pretty straight on the sides, and then you got your roof. And they said this felt more like a plane, like the fuselage is very curved.
Right.
It's not like flat floor, it's like it rounded on all the sides. So I've heard that helps with safety, with distributing weight in an impact and a side impact. And I've also heard that helps with the crosswinds, that the air kind of moves over it from side to side. But same time, I'm thinking like 1,700 pounds going 70 miles an hour. And then there's crosswinds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I would be very... that's probably something, if we ever get the opportunity to go down there to San Diego and talk with them and see an actual physical prototype.
I hope so.
Maybe get a ride in it. I would love to talk with the CFD engineers and just see some of the models that they've generated.
Same.
And all the different cases that they thought of, like not just like taking this thing to 100 and I forget what the top speed. Do they even have a top speed for this thing?
I think it's 110.
So even so, taking that thing up to 110 and then maybe having a tailwind or whatever, just like, what does that look like on this thing, both stress wise and fluid flow wise, and then same with crosswinds and all that. Like, I'm very much a simulation engineer type of guy. I'm like, give me all the pretty rainbow colors on the plot.
Let's see it.
It's a whole story.
I think the wheel placement should help a lot with that.
Oh yeah,
likely, because it's so wide. It's probably really hard to tip, because sure, it's lighter, but you've got like two points that it'd be pushing against, opposed to a
it's 2 points, but the 2 points are also offset. So it's not like when you push a car with 4 wheels and it's on 2 points, being it's 2 right tires or left tires, whichever tires that you're thinking of in this circumstance. Those are in line, and it's an evenly
distributed impact.
Well, you get into problems with moments of inertia and generated moments just from the force on the vehicle and all that. It becomes a problem of an inverted pendulum problem, basically. And the thing's going to tip one way or the other because you have your center of mass above, and it depends on how much force you're applying and all that. But I guess what I'm getting at is, or at least what you're getting at with the Aptera, because of how it's designed like a tripod, even if it gets blown to where one wheel, specifically probably one of the front 2 wheels, somehow gets lifted, still a bunch of that weight is towards that wheel that's in the air. It's not like it's hovering over the other 2.
Right. Because the battery pack's still right in the center of that
It's inclined now, but it's still weighing down that part of it. And I just wonder also, like, some of those, like, what's the brains of the Aptera thinking at that point? Like, we have one wheel up. I guess, do we take evasive action where we turn the wheels left or right so that way we bounce out to where we get the other wheel on the ground? But now we're inclined on the road, and this is where we have to decelerate.
And because there's individual motors in each of those wheels, you could even have one go faster than the other to help push.
Right. Well, one would just basically turn itself off, right? Because it's not making contact with the road anymore, so it doesn't make sense to spin it a crazy amount. So it'd be like the Rivian in that case. What a weird...
This will be fascinating to see, I think.
There's so many more questions. I agree that I thought we answered a lot, or we introduced
pretty much everything on our
questions.
list we got to.
But now
the list has grown.
Yeah, it's just grown back to what it is, and maybe some more probably by the time if we ever get an opportunity, and hopefully we do, and whenever that happens.
Another huge perk of those wheels and the lighter weight. Okay, crosswinds could be a concern, sure, but someone was bringing up in my stream that they were doing the math on how the lighter weight means the tires wear out slower than a typical EV. And because there's only 3 of them, and they chose a fairly small, fairly standard size, people are estimating... They're
smaller than 18-inch, of course, right? They're probably around, like, 15,
I forget,
16.
But
probably
I think
16
they're close
at
to
least.
15. And they're a common wheel. They're not special, like, custom tires or something. Like, people in my stream were estimating they could get easily over 50,000 miles before needing to be changed out. Even when you change them out, there's only 3. Like, the tire that they use for the Aptera is like half the price of what a typical Tesla tire would cost. So, like, the tire maintenance, I think, would also be far better on this, far cheaper on this than pretty much anything else. Cheaper than a Bolt, cheaper than a Model 3, because it's just a small, simple tire, and you got less weight pushing down on them. So I think that's just another added perk. But did you see there's an old interview with Steve and Chris where they had the Alpha prototype behind them, and he was able to push it by hand. It was like sitting right behind him, and he was like, yeah, this thing is insanely lightweight, and he just with one single hand grabs the tail and just pushes it. I mean, not really fast, but, he could move it just with one arm. I was like, whoa, I'm not used to that being possible. Maybe the Alpha didn't have a parking brake.
I could do that with 2 hands with my Honda Civic. I could push that thing wherever I want to because it was a small car. It wasn't like a crazy big Civic with a crazy big engine. It was probably one of the most smallest engines that they've put in a Civic.
Right.
Probably, maybe not ever, but like 89 horsepower.
I pushed my Ranger with my foot when the transmission was out. It couldn't go backwards. I had to open the door and put my foot on the ground, and usually I couldn't do it by myself, but whoever was with me would do it on their side, and then we could get it backed up. But seeing him do it just with one hand was like, whoa. That was cool.
Sure. This thing's going to be a neat vehicle at the end of the day, and I just have to keep on trying to find ways to convince my wife to maybe somewhat consider it because I'm so jazzed about its design and its just like cost effectiveness and all that. Like,
we may be able to, depending on how many Aptera points we have, we could work out a Tailosive discount for you. Because I'm not gonna be able to redeem all the points I have. So
that'd be interesting. Yeah, you just order 2 and then just give me 1 and all that. Do they allow that? Like, if you necessarily like selling the car to me, but like if you got a whole bunch of points from Aptera, I'm sure they will because of your discussion with Chris Anthony. Them being very much forward with paying it forward to the customers and all that with the referral program, but like being able to like refer enough points to where like, oh, oops, I can now get 3 1,000 mile range Apteras because of how many referral code points I've accumulated. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen them suggest the idea that you could transfer the points to anyone, but I think that there's nothing to stop them from just letting me redeem 2 because I've got the points for it, and then I can sell off one of them. I'm sure probably a bunch of people are going to do that. So
you're making this really tough on me now, Drew.
I think we've still the crowdfunding is coming in steadily. They're at the time of recording, we're at 12.35 million. So they're past the halfway mark to their 20 million accelerator goal. And there's some.
That means they only have like 1,200 reservations left, right? Or not?
Well,
reservations,
they
but
changed
like,
they changed the rule.
What is it?
Slots, you mean?
Yeah, the slots to where you can get your Founders or Launch Edition or something
Yeah.
like that.
Originally, the thought was to offer $20 million to accelerators. And then once that 20 million was full, every slot would basically, it was going to rank to whoever invested the most would get a launch edition. But there was the growing fear that people were seeing, because there was others that were investing way more, clearly, that like, well, what happens if at the last second someone jumps in? You were on the 2,000 slots and then you got docked out because someone outbid you, and they realized that wasn't fair. He actually talked about that off the record before they announced it, but he was like, before we were going to have it time limited, but we realized that was going to probably boot a bunch of people out of the accelerator program, so they've changed it to be slot limited. So now it maxes out once they hit 2,000 delivery slots filled. That way nobody gets booted out at the last second. So as soon as there's 2,000 people that have invested 10,000, then it's done. Then they'll end the program. But until then, it's just there's 852 members right now that are all just kind of trying to outbid each other on the accelerators. And that's why they can actually, because of this new system, they can get more than 20 million invested. Because if you just have 1,000 people hit 20 million, then okay, there's still 1,000 more slots available for people to join in. So there's some more federal grants they've applied for that they've referenced on their LinkedIn page. I'm actually starting to get convinced that they might make it to market simply through crowdfunding and government grants. I
Which
think
is
that
like
might be
best
enough.
case scenario at this point. The fact that they don't have to get into any debt or loans with any banks or anything like that. It just becomes people believed in our cause, and there's already grants out there for vehicles like ours.
Right.
And so we're just able to go to market purely based off of that. And
yeah, they didn't need like a big whale investor or anything.
We didn't need the Saudis. We just
that would be cool if they could get it without them.
But
I won't complain if they use them. But I'll take whoever just so they can get it to market. But I'm just very hopeful now, seeing them get the California grant and seeing the accelerator program continue to grow. And it's like there's still a lot of slots, and they're past halfway to their investment goals with the accelerator. So I'm very pumped for them. I'm honestly more excited for them than anything Tesla's doing right now.
I think I'd make this a game, honestly, if I was someone who wanted to be part of the accelerator program. Putting in a bid and like thinking, ooh, I want like number 777 or something like that. And then someone just puts in a huge bid later and then bumps you down to 778. You're like, crap, how do I get to 77 or 777 now? Because you can't. Well, I guess there's a whole lot of just like, what is it in this list? It's like $10,006 or whatever. But like, $10,500. Like, how do you even get a specific number in there at all? You don't really, I think. So like, it'd be a very interesting game to play if you want a specific number in here. Like, I don't know.
For sure, like get the 69, get the 420.
Oh yeah,
those slots are probably being fought over. It'd be cool if you could specify, like, if I invest more than everybody else below 420, can I just keep 420? Even if someone invests less than me, they can be.
I feel like that would mess with the numbers, and they wouldn't be okay with that. I think
that gets messy, but I understand why someone would want that, though.
Maybe if you
get the little 420 inscription on your car.
Maybe if you invested like maybe the rest of the funding at this point, like the highest invested of all time is like $1,010,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if you invested maybe like, I don't know, I want to say like maybe 5 to 10 million or something like that. Maybe that gets your ticket into like, I can get whatever number I want, and you all have to sign my car.
Yeah.
Everyone on the team signs the car because I gave you $12 million or whatever. Yeah, who knows?
Right.
All right.
I don't know if it.
Several things.
I also have hope given Faraday Future made it to production.
Oh my goodness.
Which I thought would never happen after all these years. It's like, if Faraday can make it, of course Aptera can make it. Like, come on. It's harder to kill these startups than we think. Like,
I think we still have to
Canoe's still
heed
kicking.
the words of Randy, though, of just like, some of them will have to go. And
we say that, but all this time has passed and they're still here. Like, Nikola still exists. They're still making trucks. And I'm like,
guess so.
Someone believes in these guys. Whether or not they deserve it, another question. But like, people are still. Lucid was tight on cash. They weren't doing well. And then the Saudis dumped another big billion into them again. And it's like, if you just believe in it enough, whether or not they're profitable, they might they might survive, you know.
Right.
It's kind of fun to watch, but like,
Who knows?
I thought for sure Faraday was dead. I thought they were
keep on thinking Fisker's dead, but then I hear a
Yeah.
news report every once in a while of a new development. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. We're like, yeah, here we are. We're back.
Yeah.
So here's hoping. But
Here's hoping.
thank you for joining me. It's weird to think it's been over an hour. I think Randy's taking
in
delivery.
his car. He's in his
Right
car
now.
or at least he and Brittany are in the family car. It's actually Brittany's
As we
car,
speak.
but family car.
Yeah. That is so cool. Wow. We'll have probably lots to hear about next week.
I'm
so
surprised there's
stay
no
tuned, all.
pictures yet. But yeah. All right.
I know. Come
Take
on.
care, everyone.
Bye-bye.